Good evening. My name is Kurt Preskowski, Chairman of the Finance Committee. I'd like to welcome you to the Finance Committee meeting of Wednesday, March 29th, 2023 at 6 p.m. This is an in-person meeting, open session here at Town Hall of Ayer. Do I need to call to order or motion?
The meeting is called to order. There you go.
Okay.
Just say that.
All right, the meeting is called to order. So, okay, the first thing on the agenda is...
I would like to make a motion to review and approve the March 15th minutes.
I second that.
Okay. All those in favor of the March 15th meeting minutes?
Aye.
Sebastian?
Aye.
Aye.
Sebastian, aye. Kurt, aye. Jen, aye. And Andrew?
Call that unanimous
Aye.
consent.
We have unanimous consent. Okay, I would like to move to the committee discussion of the budget of 2024. And specifically, what we are going to do this evening is next week on April 4th will be a meeting of the select board to go over the warrant and the articles. And the Finance Committee will be sharing our positions with the articles in the warrant at that meeting. So what we are going to do this evening is to go down the articles in the warrant. We have a copy of the warrant with the articles, and then we also have a sheet with the articles, and we are going to go down the articles and touch on each one and vote as a committee on whether to recommend, does not recommend, an opposition, or to report a town meeting on each article. And then we will have those recorded, and then we'll be able to share those with the select board next week on April 4th. So I'm going to start with, again, the copy of the warrant, which lists the articles. And again, in the warrant and articles themselves are the complete details. We have just the heading of the articles here, and I will mention the article, then poll the members of the Finance Committee and record those and proceed on down the list. Any questions so far?
No.
Yes, sir.
Chairman, just not to belabor the point, just
Yes.
through you members of the FinCom. So on the 4th, when you meet with the select board, that'll be the finalization of the warrant. And from time to time, there are some final things that will happen on the 4th. So there are two items I just want for the record and for the committee to be aware of. There may be 3 points, actually. There may be two other articles that the select board, it will be on the agenda on the 4th to discuss with you. They involve the use of free cash. They're not definitive yet, but want to discuss. One is a potential article to transfer $10,000, not transfer, $10,000 from free cash to the 4th of July account. Mm-hmm. And the second one, why I'm bringing it up is it's not in this draft, but it will be in the packet on Friday. The second one is a proposal to use a portion of free cash towards the electronic crosswalk technology. Both of these had been brought up, and some of you may have recalled, at the second public budget forum. So I just wanted to flag those, Mr. Chair, that those two, you'll see them on Friday, and with the full board have that discussion.
Okay.
And then just the last point, just so the FinCom's aware, on the stabilization article, usually on the 4th, just to flag it, the amounts that are in there are subject potentially to change on the 4th. So there's going to be an item when you meet with the select board on Tuesday before the approval of the warrant for the finalization of the free cash, and we'll go through all of this, including those 2 potential articles, as well as the exact amounts for stabilization.
Okay, and stabilization here, I says Article 22?
Correct.
Okay, so what I'm hearing then is on April 4th, we may need to just make one more comment on these 2 items and possibly be aware that there was a change in Article 22.
Correct. And traditionally, from time to time, it comes down to the wire, as they say, on the 4th with that. And you'll have all of the material will be in the packet.
Terrific.
All right?
Great.
I just thank you.
Great, thank you, Robert. Okay, any discussion on that from the committee?
No?
No.
Okay.
No.
One thing I was going to, before we start, I was going to throw out to the committee as we go through this process. On the agenda, we usually leave public comments to the end. I was wondering if the committee would entertain the idea of if there are, as we go through each article, if there's any public comment, stop and throw that out?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, okay, so then we'll, again, what we'll do is we'll look at each article. I think maybe what we could do, and I'll throw this out, is mention the article, ask if there's any discussion, any public comment, and then poll.
Sounds good to
I
me.
like it. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so to the warrant itself, there is, this year, we're having a special meeting, a town meeting first, so there is 3 articles, a part of that. Article 1, which is the supplemental appropriation for water. Any comments, either from the committee or from the public on that?
Wait.
Article 1,
Article-
second page.
Okay, on the.
Oh, the very
Yeah,
beginning.
there you go.
There,
I went to the
Yep.
right.
first page for it. Okay. I didn't see this one. Oh, yes, I did see this.
All right. Then, so I think to just,
I would go with that. I would recommend, yeah.
okay, so I was just going to, for again, interest of expediency and also the minutes, for Article 1, Jin,
I would say recommend, yeah.
Recommend? Sebastian,
Recommend.
Andrew,
I'm good with that.
okay, and Kurt recommends, so for Article 1,
I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 1 for approval, or whatever that is. Right? I assume we need an official vote
I second that.
as a recommend position.
okay.
That way we have it in the minutes.
All right then, okay, well, very good. So then we will move and second and vote.
Aye.
Okay, so we have motion, second, and
Aye. And
aye,
And
aye,
yeah.
Aye.
okay. Okay, Article 2, supplemental appropriation sewer. Any discussion from the committee or public?
Same thing, yeah.
recommend. Aye.
Yeah, we recommend, yeah.
So, okay, just a point of order. So maybe we should, since we are going to do motion second.
Well, you can discuss it and then someone can make a motion.
Okay. So in general, Jen,
I would recommend, and I can also move to motion that we recommend this.
Right.
ah,
I like that.
Okay.
Am I jumping a little too hard?
You're slightly jumping the gun, but
yeah,
that's okay.
We're going to do a discussion. If
Yeah,
we're-
yeah, yeah,
which
but
which group
I
to
don't
like-
feel like we're going to discuss much.
No.
Okay.
Just trying to get the motion going.
Okay.
Maybe
Get a rhythm-
motion's the
get a
wrong word.
rhythm going?
Rhythm, thank you.
Yeah, the rhythm going here. So maybe, again, take a break here, just procedural. discussion, and then someone can make a motion, and then I will poll motion second to,
Yes.
and everyone can.
Yep.
Oh, okay, motion and someone, okay, so for each article, we'll discussion, if someone could do a motion to
After that.
recommend.
Or not.
Yeah, after we all recommend, then we just.
Yeah, how about we
motion.
take turns? So for each article, then how about we actually read the article? So just so that I think we need to set a pattern. Then we will, by the end of this meeting, we will be so good at
We'll
that.
figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
we
So
go.
you read the article, and then you go either counterclockwise or clockwise. We all say our opinion, and then maybe then you can say the motion. Or if you want to take
Okay.
turns, then we can
Rotate the
take turns
motions.
to do the
Okay,
motion.
okay.
So I would read the title. So the first one, right? Supplemental water appropriation for Water Enterprise Fund, which is to indirect costs of $311,705, of which $165,705 is to come from the water revenue, $146,000 is to come from the water enterprise retained earnings, or take any action thereon to or there in relation to. Something like that.
Yeah, so the thing is that we either want to understand one of them, because these three are the same thing. If we understand one, we will be able to understand all the rest. So, so if we want to discuss at all, then maybe we, to me, this indirect cost, part of it come from the water revenue. That's easy to understand, and the other part come from the enterprise fund retained earnings. So what does that mean? Is that just the enterprise fund itself, or so now in the end, are we getting 100? So it's you're really only taking 146,000 from the enterprise fund, right? So
You have several wonderful people that you can ask direct
so
questions
yeah,
to.
I understand. We should ask them, but do we like among ourselves? Does any of us want to explain this before they comment on? So how do we understand this? So the indirect costs. So what does the indirect cost mean? So because the enterprise fund, my understanding is a self-sufficient, sort of like a self-contained fund, right? So the town gets revenue from people paying their bills,
Yes.
and so but then the bills that's the water revenue, and that's not enough. And then there's this from the enterprise retained earnings. So where does this retained earning come from?
Well, I think it'd be the purview of the chair to ask for the review of.
So if none of us can
Expert.
explain, right? Then maybe we should ask
yeah.
But
I think it's probably just better to ask them first.
Yes. So,
Please,
okay.
Robert. Yes.
So,
But we also need to mindful of time, so we cannot discuss like this on every article.
No.
But we're going to try to understand. But if we understand this one, then the
Yeah.
rest
We gotta
will
get this
just
done
go
in an
through
hour.
fast, right?
okay.
Because they're the same thing. They're all done the same fashion. We just need to understand one. So would
okay, on
would
these three.
the rubber want
Yes.
to? Thank you so much.
So, Mr. Chair and members of the FinCom, and
Yes.
it's your meeting. One suggestion, is just a suggestion, is what the select board will do, and you can decide however you want to, is they will just usually go read the title of the article, go through each of them, and if members have questions or comments, they'll say pass, and you'll come back to it, and you can take a vote, to sort of to expedite it. But it's up to however you want to. It's just a suggestion on that. The special town meeting is right before the annual. These three articles, they're supplemental articles, as you mentioned, Jin, for the enterprise fund. On Article 1 and Article 2, which is the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund, about a month ago, the DPW director and the Water and Sewer Superintendent came before the Select Board, but they anticipate, and through work that Barbara has done, that there's going to be a slight shortfall for this year. So that's why it's a special town meeting, because once town meeting acts, that funds become available right then. So they need it for this year. So Article 1 looks to take $146,000, which is the estimated shortfall, and in the explanatory note, it's driven by increase in water chemicals and unexpected costs, from retained earnings. So within the water enterprise, there's a retained earnings that we retain.
So each enterprise fund actually has a few categories into that.
Correct.
Okay, and one of
Right.
them is retained earnings.
Right, you have your direct costs, your indirect costs, your
Do you know how each category, the fund in there is generated? Where did the return earning come from?
so Mr. Chair, through you,
Yes, please.
Barbara, do you want to? Well, Barbara is
Hi,
the
thank
expert
you.
on the.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
So every year at year end, we perform what's called a closing. And if revenues outweigh the expenses and our expenses are less than we anticipated, that money then flows into what's called retained earning.
Oh.
On the general fund, we call it free cash.
Okay, so it's like a piggy bank.
Yeah. So then that retained earnings is available for use for future time. It has to be approved at a town meeting
I see,
to
I see.
use it.
Gotcha.
And in this case, so what happens is in this case, they're anticipating their expenses are going to be about $146,000 more than was approved
Yeah.
to expend last year at town meeting. So they're asking to take that out of retained earnings in anticipation of that, those increased expenses.
Okay,
To be
understood.
clear, that does not cost the taxpayers any money because that's in the
It does
retained
not.
earnings.
It's out.
No, it does not.
wanted to
cost,
make
and
that
and
clear.
it doesn't affect, no tax
So
impact.
usually, how much is there in the retained earning category?
So
Are there
it-
years when you don't
it-
have enough to actually?
It varies from year to year. So right now, which one are we on, water or sewer?
Yeah, 1 and 2 water.
So water has about $4.6 million and sewer has just under $2.5 million.
Oh, it's plenty. Okay.
So one of the things they do is recently we had that rate review and the goal is to have retained earnings in for unforeseen
Yeah.
things such as this. So this is a very minor use of their retained earnings.
Great.
And-
Thank you so much.
And just the final point, just for everyone's benefit, as Barbara will often mention, this is the 146,000, is what's estimated that's needed to get us to July 1st. In the event, say that the whole amount isn't needed, then it will just
Go
revert
back.
back.
to yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
It's very sensible.
Because we have so many more months left in the year, we just want to be cautious and make sure we have
Sure,
enough.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so may I ask then,
Sure.
does that same logic apply to Article 1, 2, and 3?
Yes.
I feel
Yes.
so.
And if we don't need it, they will fall back to retained earnings. Absolutely.
Nice.
Excellent.
Okay,
Great.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Paul.
So now we can, Robert, yeah. So now we can go through, and so the way that Robert suggested, I don't think I quite
You have any
get that part.
discussion?
Whatever. So I think we're done with discussion. So let's not vote. So,
Okay.
and then we can vote all three articles all at once.
All at once?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jen, make the motion.
Yes, you want
I
it. That's
motion to recommend Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3 in the, this is a special town meeting. Yeah.
great. I second that. Jen?
Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
We have 4 in favor, and Article 1, 2, and 3, a special town meeting, are
Yeah.
noted as recommend.
Yeah.
You're ruining my minutes.
We'll take a breath here.
No, you're fine.
No, this is
We're adaptable.
That was good. That was
very good.
Okay, so now we can get to the actual town meeting articles.
Okay. As we give Andrew a moment to...
No, we're good.
Okay.
yeah, cut up.
Consummate professional.
So, all right then. I am going to suggest we're going to look at Articles 1, salaries of elected officials.
Yeah.
And Article 2, contract funding of Town Hall Clerical Union. As both of these concern wages. I think we can discuss those together. Is there any discussion, questions on this from the committee or the public?
I support both. So I motion to recommend.
I recommend.
Okay, so we have a motion to recommend, and do we have a second?
Sure, I'll second it.
Second, okay. So then for Articles 1 and 2, We have a motion and second to recommend. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No. Okay. Okay, we will stop at Article 3, the fiscal year 2024 omnibus budget. Any discussion or comments?
This is the whole budget, right?
This is, yes, this is the whole budget. Yes, which is, we have a note from Robert?
Mr. Chair, just very briefly, so
Yes.
on Article 3, the omnibus budget, so you have the final draft which came out on the 23rd. So
Which we received by email.
And what
yes.
you will see for Tuesday, Barbara's going to work her magic. This will be an insert inside the warrant, and some of you have seen this. And then the moderator at town meeting will also go through each of the sections and ask if anybody has a question or a comment to say pass or hold. Also on Article 3, as we talked about at the buy board, after Article 3 is moved and seconded at town meeting, we have generally done a brief presentation on just the highlights of the budget. We look to have, members of the FinCom, Select Board, involved. This would also be an opportunity, I would argue again, through the moderator, if the FinCom wanted to report on general on the budget, would be the opportune time. So I just bring up sort of that procedure. So though it says under Article 3, of course, looking for your position, whether you recommend or not on the budget, there'll still also be the budget presentation, and there's often lively discussion on specific items, through the moderator as we go through.
Nice.
I like the use of the word lively.
Yeah, it depends, yeah.
Spirited would be
So I guess would anyone like to talk about it at all, or any sub-department, I guess? I currently have nothing.
I have, I think we've,
Yeah, I don't think we want to talk about it now.
I think we've, again,
Recommend.
Yeah.
so,
Go ahead,
Make-
Sebastian, make the motion.
I recommend.
making
I
a motion
second
to
the motion.
recommend?
I motion to recommend, yes.
I second the motion.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 So Article 3, recommend. Moving on, Article 4, fiscal year 2024 Ayer Shirley Regional School District Assessment.
I had a comment.
Yes,
We can ask other people, but I think for Article 4 and Article 5, I would actually take no position because we did not cover that in any depth. But I'm open to other people's opinions.
Sure, I
Okay.
don't mind it.
Leave it as a note for next year to dig into it more.
All right.
But I don't know if anyone else has anything
So
to
do
say
you
to
want
that.
a motion to?
Well, I don't know if there's some discussion.
yeah.
We have a lot to go through, so I don't want to get hung up on one, so.
Well, no, this is.
And I do agree, we did not really, I mean, we had the two school boards give presentation, but there wasn't really a lot of time to discuss things, so. So I actually think Andrew's idea is good, so.
Okay.
So we should take a position of no, because we don't really.
To pass? Is that what we're doing? Passing? Or no?
The official answer is recommends, does not recommend, no
No
position.
position.
No
Yeah.
position,
So
okay,
we
no
can just
position.
choose to print no position for this article.
Well, we were,
But it's
so this
fine.
is this, we are still in discussion, which is
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
This
Do
is
you,
good.
do you think that's okay?
We can, what we will do once we will,
She's
a little
asking
bit
for
more
your
discussion,
opinion, I
we
think,
will vote on what we would, as a committee, what we would
Well-
like.
It's your opinion.
Yeah, what do you think?
From my, from the presentations of the school boards.
Superintendent.
And superintendents, thank you. And the discussions that I've attended, I feel that they've been fairly presented, and my feeling is to recommend.
Okay.
Sebastian, any input?
See, I wasn't here for those meetings, so it's
Well,
tough for
actually,
me.
I should take my word back. The Neshoba Valley Technical School did not come to the present, did they? We only had the Ayer Shirley original high school.
This is a good point.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Okay.
so for that one, we definitely should say no, no position. I mean, no position is not against it. It's just, neutral.
Okay, so we will, I'm going to get to a little, some more comments there. We do have one public,
I just have a favor.
Yes.
Could you all speak a little louder?
oh,
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time
Apologies.
hearing you when you're all talking at once.
Got it.
okay.
Thank you.
So, and, your name?
Pauline?
Pauline?
Laura
Oh,
Pauline.
hi, welcome. Um, And we have the chief's commentary. And Robert, did you have any note for, that we should take into account? This or?
With respect to
School
Article 4 and
Five,
and
yeah.
Article 5, so both superintendents are generally at town meeting or representatives from the school committees respectively. Both of these articles are for the town's portion of the assessment. They are prepared to answer any questions that town meeting may have. And if requested from the floor, again, through the moderator, they sometimes do have a brief presentation and so forth on the budget. But again, it's your purview as far as what your position as a committee is on both of those.
Okay.
I did get the impression
Thank you.
that the school
Yeah, thank you.
budget was separate and sort of like from the town budget. So like when we were discussing, sort of like, because the school budget doesn't come from, I don't know.
What's that big multi-million-dollar line item on the bottom when you look at the budget, right?
Yes, so if we have the, and Robert, you might explain this a little bit better, but we have the school budget, which is presented by the superintendent, and then into the town's omnibus budget, there is a line item taken from that school budget prepared by the superintendent, correct?
So, Mr. Chair, just
Yes.
so the omnibus budget will just be all of the towns, okay? On this document, we did include, as we always do, on the bottom, both of the school assessments, but both of the assessments are separate articles, so it's not part of the omnibus. And because it's a regional school district, it is separate budgetary authority. Of course, both are asking town meeting to approve the recommended assessment. But the development of that budget, the Ayer Shirley Regional School District budget and all of the specifics, and the Neshoba Valley Technical budget is the purview of those respective school committees, and obviously the superintendents in preparing it.
Okay. Any questions for Robert?
I'm sure we'll have some more in a bit,
Okay.
but not right now.
So we were in
So-
whether we're going recommend or no position for Article 4.
Okay, so I think in this case, we should take a poll then individually.
I mean, I can be convinced to go with recommend, so.
And I think with Robert's point that these are prepared by the superintendents, and that information, well, again, we did have the presentation from the Ayer Shirley. We did not have the presentation by the Neshoba Valley. That we are, I think, aware, and my feeling is that we could recommend, and that's my,
Article 4.
I'm going to say, again, in the, for both
4 and
Article
5.
and 4, we can do those together, since they are both referring to a school district.
So I'll recommend.
So, so do you make a motion then that we recommend?
Well, I think both you guys still are at no position, or? right?
Jen?
Well, I don't really want us to like dwell on this for too long because I don't think we're going to make any material difference. Yeah. So I mean, whether we recommend or not, it's really someone else's decision.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with Andrew that
Yeah.
we did not really get
I agree.
to understand much detail about actually question them. So and the technical school, I didn't see the budget at all. So, but that school enrolls students from a lot of different towns. So Ayer is only a very small part. So Ayer's influence of their overall budget, I think, is also very small. So I don't think that we can actually say much about it. So I don't really. So I feel there's no harm in taking, say, no position.
Okay.
Because no position is not against the budget. It's just neutral to say that I have not been given enough information to make an informed decision. So I rather feel like I want to be honest. If I don't have opinion on something, I don't want to say that I have opinion. And if
Okay.
I do have opinion, if I do recommend something, then I'm willing to defend that. So I feel that, if someone's questioned that, then I need to have a reason to say that why I recommend, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what I would suggest is that we, Robert, I'm just going to ask you for a procedural take on this in a moment. What I'm going to recommend then in this for Article 4 and 5 is that we actually take a poll, and the majority of the poll will be what the committee will put on for those two articles. Robert, the procedural question I have is, after we do the poll, should there be a motion and second, or a motion and second in there somewhere?
Sure. Yeah, it seems that you want to be recording your motion, so yes, for your record.
I have a compromise.
Yes, sir.
I would be okay recommending Article 4 and no position on Article 5.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was
Because
thinking.
we didn't get a presentation.
Yeah, that way because there are full of us. If you take poll, there is the possibility of you get a hand result.
Tie.
Yeah, there's getting a tie. So because 2 against 2. So let's just say that we compromise.
I second that.
Yeah.
You could also follow the proper position, right? You could make a motion at any time and second it at any time, and then just
Okay.
vote. And if it gets voted down, it gets voted down.
Right,
Let's
right,
go.
right.
Nice.
And then we'll just figure it out.
All right, I
Just
feel the
burn-
rhythm. We're in
burn
rhythm
through it,
now.
and
We're rolling.
I'm-
No, this is good, and
Catching
I
up on my
believe
Robert's
this is
rules.
we're trying. We're
I would
doing
like to
our job.
make a motion
Yes.
to recommend Article 4 and have no position on Article 5.
I second the motion.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have 4 ayes for Article 4, recommend, and Article 5, no position.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, the next articles are the Articles 6, 7, 8, and 9 are the enterprise articles, the enterprise funds, and specifically 6 is solid waste enterprise, ambulance, Article 7, Article 8, sewer, and Article 9, water. I mentioned them together as they are all enterprise funds. Would we like to discuss them together or separately?
I do think that it's good to discuss them as a group because if we understand how one article is constructed, then we'll understand the rest. Yeah, because
Okay.
I do
have
feel, yeah.
The only thing, I believe the ambulance is requesting a tax levy, and the rest are coming from retained earnings of their prospective.
Well, this also has because there were when I read this, there were things I didn't understand. The solid waste also has tax levy,
Okay.
and so I guess sewer and water are worded exactly the same fashion, and then the solid waste and ambulance, basically they have 4 numbers in each article.
Well, that's,
And-
we don't have to talk about it. I was just commenting that they are
Yes,
slightly
I
different
see.
in that regard.
Yeah. Now the thing is, I do kind of when I read this, there were things I did not quite understand. So say direct cost of this much, of which that much is coming from the revenue. That's okay. And then there is a second amount that's coming from the retained earnings, which you would just explain to us. So that is the shortfall that is going to fill it. So their total cost is a lot more than the revenue that comes in. right? Not a lot more. Like
Or the
a
money they
regular
have on hand.
Sorry?
Revenue and money on hand are two separate things, right? If I recall from our previous
You're right.
discussion with the fire, is that it could take months and months to see that money, which could be a different budget cycle.
You're right.
that
So
correct?
anyway,
Sounds good.
so 468,000 is the
Second
total cost, and so about three quarters is already in the, you already had the money, and then there's 45,000 you had to take from the piggy bank to make up for it, and then there is also this amount come from the tax levy, which I was wondering because my understanding, the support for the revenue for solid waste was just from selling the bags and the sticker. So where is the tax levy coming from? So and then
Traditionally, as I understand it, and we can get Robert to confirm, is that
Yeah, Robert, I
the
think-
town has added money from the tax levy to cover the differences historically in the past. And otherwise, your rate to throw a trash bag out instead of $8
Would
is
be more.
$27.
I see. Now the thing is, also the numbers here, they do not all add up, so they must mean different things because I think that the first three numbers were like 351. I'm looking at Article 6. 351,000 plus 45,000 plus 72,000. I think will give you 468,000. So where is this 126,000?
Okay.
So where does that compare to the 72,000? So what's the difference between
I
them?
think that's just the gap in income versus expenditures. So they have direct costs of almost $1 million, of which most of it is covered under what they make. We can,
Wait,
ask,
wait,
we
wait,
can
wait.
ask Barbara.
And could we have Barbara and Robert address this? And may I suggest, because I think, Jen, if you look forward to 7, the same.
Yeah. So it's the same pattern. Exactly.
Yeah, same pattern.
If I understand this one, I understand how the other one
Okay,
is.
so,
Yeah.
very good, terrific.
And she did a great job explaining it. So.
So we'll give you a very quick crash course on the anatomy of an enterprise article.
Okay.
So I also want to point out, as you can see, the budget book, which everybody will get at town meeting for Articles 6 through 9, will have much more detail from Barbara on everything. So Article 6, so the solid waste. So the first thing in the enterprise you fund, the way it's set up, you have your direct costs, which is the main function, and your indirect costs, which are generally like your personnel costs, benefits, and so forth. So if you look at Article 6, the direct costs of $468,320, of which $351,180 of that comes from solid waste revenue.
Yeah.
And Mr. Seeley was correct that that's mostly the bags, permits, and bulk items, okay? And then, but 45,000 is to come from solid waste retained earnings. So just like, Jen, we discussed earlier, this
Yeah.
fund is, we're using some of the retained earnings.
Yeah.
However, there's still, and this has been historically the case on this enterprise fund at this point, there's still a shortfall in the sense there's not the money sold from permits and bags and so forth. There's still a shortfall. So there's a general fund subsidy of 72,140. Let me back up. 72,140 comes from the tax levy.
So tax levy is in the omnibus budget. It's on the general fund. It's not in the enterprise fund. It's
So the tax levy is the amount we can tax. So every year you have a amount that you take from the prior year. You can increase it by 2.5%
Yeah.
in growth. That's the tax levy. So what we're saying is we're using some of the town's tax levy anticipated revenues to subsidize and pay for this.
Now, if I understand the way that the solid waste enterprise work, probably every year there's a deficit. So then, is there a time when the retained earnings are going to be run out? Or is this retained earning different from the retained earning that we talked about earlier in the special time meeting?
So the solid waste, unlike water and sewer, which can change their rates, and they set those rates to cover their anticipated expenses, there's much more limited revenue for solid waste. So because of that, it's historically been consistent that the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund has a substantial amount of its budget paid from the tax levy.
I see.
So which is the 72,140 plus the 126,650.
So I was wondering, number one is, why didn't you just take the whole thing from, say, or if the retained earnings you worry about, so this retained earning is a different bucket than the special town meeting retained earnings.
So it's solid waste retained earnings still has its own retained earnings. It just, there was no need for this one to be in the special town meeting.
Okay.
But this is a conservative approach, so by using some of the tax levy and not using all of the retained earnings, and being very conservative with our revenue estimates, anything left over can help, can fall to the retained earnings for solid
So-
waste to be used at a future year.
So how did you decide how much to take from tax levy and how much from retained earning?
Okay, so what we did is we did an expense budget. And we took the total expense budget for the solid waste and estimated budget for fiscal '24. And we did an estimated revenue budget as well. So we took and then we also have what's called indirect costs. So those are the costs of the personnel who work in the solid waste department, the health, the benefits and everything. And that we found there is a very detailed calculation actually to determine that amount, and it has to get paid back to the town. So then what we took is I took our revenues, our estimated revenues, we subtracted out the direct costs for solid waste, which is the 468,320. Our estimated revenues was only 351,180. So in order to then come back to that 468,000, we're using 45,000 from retained earnings and 72,000 of 140.
So do you always
Tax levy.
do this in a similar proportion?
Yeah, it's always the same wording.
Yeah,
Every year, this is worded the same way. Is
so
that
yeah,
what
I
you-
know the same way, but the numbers, would the numbers change? Say that you would take the shortfall, the difference between 468,000, and I'm just rounding it up, and 351,000. So the 117,000. So do you every year take that shortfall and say that 40% of this is going to come from the retained earnings, and 60% of this is going to come from tax levy?
it's
Do you
not-
always have a
It's
formula?
not
the same
really a
formula?
percentage, it's more, so I get together with the department head, in this case, it would be the DPW director, and when we looked at our revenues, we only believe we will get 351,000
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
conservatively.
Yeah, yeah.
So then we said, well, we've got this amount in retained earnings, so let's conservatively use 45,000 of that, which would then make us need 72,140
From
on the
the-
tax levy.
Okay.
And then with the indirect costs, which are total 126,650, because we also raise that
you
on the
only have
tax
two
levy.
buckets. So
Yeah.
after the retained earning, the rest will have to come from
From the
levy.
tax
Yeah.
levy,
So
yeah.
now I understand, because I didn't quite understand the indirect costs with
Yeah.
the personnel.
And out of the enterprise funds, this is the one that needs the largest tax levy use or subsidy out of all four of them.
So the town hasn't
Does that make
raised the cost of the bags, right?
So I believe
But-
they changed their rate just this last year.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to estimate
change
the
it very
whole
often.
impact of that.
Of how much revenue it's going to
For
bring
me,
in.
yeah, so we were estimating very conservatively because it just got changed during this year.
Yeah, because,
Yeah.
okay.
And not,
Understood.
and not to get way off, but you raise a larger discussion, I think, sooner for another night with both the FinCom and the Select Board, and it would also take an active town meeting. There have been discussions, it has been proposed, about making the solid waste part of the general fund budget and get rid of the enterprise. Now, that's not the plan for this year. I think there's got to be some further discussion and analysis, and folks have raised that question.
I see,
Yeah.
okay.
Great.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
And then the same logic then follows on to Article 7 for the
For the
ambulance.
ambulance, yeah.
Yep, they require much less of a subsidy because they do have a more dedicated revenue source. But again, you cannot anticipate how many calls and how much insurance money it's if you're going to get, unlike water sewer rates. So we do try to be conservative and use some of the retained earnings and have some from the tax levy.
And then in 8 and 9, they are both self-sufficient. As you can see, there's no use of retained earnings or the tax levy on 8 and 9.
And then I believe, Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but during the rate reviews, the solid waste and,
Yeah, they cover
that.
everything.
Yeah.
In rate review.
yeah, so we also.
Yeah, that was water and sewer. Yeah.
Yeah, so addressing your point is that these, and again, I think, I remember the bag, the bags for the transfer station. We
Yeah,
made an adjustment in the price.
yeah. But the sticker, Ayer's sticker is still a lot cheaper than other towns. So, but I guess that's why it's Ayer.
Right,
If you
but-
raise it too much, then people are gonna complain. So.
Yeah, but
okay.
I think the main takeaway, especially for us as a finance committee, is that these items that are being reflected here
Yeah,
have
yeah.
been discussed through both.
And it looks like the town can afford it, so
It's the most
fine.
conservative approach is what I'm hearing, so.
It is. By taking this approach, we hopefully
So
can-
there's still money in retained earnings, right? You're not emptying retained
We are
earnings.
not.
Yeah.
Correct. And then anything that's not needed will fall back to retained earnings.
Excellent.
All right,
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
That's great, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
so maybe now someone can move to vote on all four together.
Oh.
What would you suggest we do? Would you suggest we recommend?
I think we should recommend.
I'll second that. New motion, right, or?
guys say?
We're
I'd
still
like-
sort of
like to make a motion. It's the
discussion.
easiest way to know she made a motion.
But the thing is, I don't know. I want to know. Do you agree? Yeah. Do you agree with me? I mean, I would like to recommend. Would you agree?
Yeah. yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I
So
agree.
then I motion to recommend Articles 6, 7, 8, and 9. Recommend on all four.
And I'll second that,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So Articles 6, 7, 8, and 9
Yeah.
are
That was good.
motion, second vote, recommend. Very good. Okay. Article 10, this is the capital budget request, and if you're looking at the warrant and articles, this goes on to the second page, the next page, where it lists the actual capital budget request. And again, just starting at the top of DPW highway, road paving, 85,000 down to the sewer enterprise, inflow infiltration repairs for 1.25 million, for a total of $2,815,979. So these are capital budget requests. They have been discussed
Yeah.
Yep,
at the
Capital Planning Committee.
Capital Planning Committee. Discussion, comments?
I'm fine with all that.
Robert, do you have?
I just, for the purpose of just information, so.
Yes.
Article 10, as mentioned, the Capital Planning Committee, which the chair is a representative, has reviewed and made these recommendations for the warrant. Article 10, these are the capital items that we borrow for, and per the town's financial policies, generally any item, there's sometimes slight exceptions, anything over 50,000, so the larger items we generally borrow for. At town meeting, the article will be moved and seconded, and again, through the moderator, it's his purview. Sometimes he's read each of the lines, and if somebody has a question on one of these projects, they'll say pass. All of the information for each of these projects is on the town's website from the Capitol, and all of the department heads will be at town meeting and prepared to answer any questions, and we do have photos and slides. And then the last piece I just point out, because it's a borrow article, it requires a 2/3 majority as opposed to a simple majority, so it requires a higher threshold of vote from town meeting.
So we actually had to borrow for every single one of this? So, okay. I thought that only did like buying the big fire truck or those we issue bonds for, right?
Well, you're going to get to that in a
So,
second.
but this part, because if we have in the retaining fund, several million, why would we want to borrow for like a 85,000? Some of these costs don't seem like very high. Do we traditionally always borrow for all of this?
So per the policies, we have generally borrowed for items 50,000 and higher. Now, I say generally that there have been over the years exceptions and so forth. The reason we do that, one is the town has a very favorable borrowing rate. And Barbara, again, and the finance team to do a lot of this work. So it is much more affordable and from a fiscal point of view to borrow, for these items. It is not a good practice to pay for these large items straight out with one-time resources, right? People have asked that question, Jen, like, why don't we take, and it has happened from time to time, why don't we take, free cash or what have you and buy some of these? We try to, have a whole approach to the borrowing. Later on, when you get to Article 14, will be the smaller items that we actually do buy right out of capital stabilization, and those are items that are generally below 50,000.
I see.
So the
So
answer
then-
was we could.
So then when you borrow, but this borrow is different from issuing bonds, because issuing municipal bonds is a much long-term borrowing, right? This, do you actually,
Right.
this type of borrow is like a, if I make an example of a household, it's like if the household has a good credit rating, you can go to the bank and borrow money at a fairly low interest rate that you probably will pay back in a few years, or?
Here's the
what is
bar.
it?
Yeah.
So when the town issues a bond, let's say it's for $10 million, that bond will contain many different projects and many different terms. Okay, so we might borrow for 2 years for the 85,000 and 20 years for the bridge, but it's all still considered one bond issue.
I see.
Okay, so when I go to bond, it's not just, okay, we're borrowing this amount of money for over the course of 20 years. It's we're borrowing for individual lengths of time on each project based on the project's very different information. It's all by statute how long we can borrow for, and it's based on generally things like how long whatever you're borrowing for would
Yeah, I
depreciate
actually
for.
buy a lot of municipal bonds. So
Yeah.
the thing is, but does the town take into consideration now that we're in a rising interest environment, so that if you had borrowed, 2 years ago, you probably would be, doing very well. But if you now go out to borrow, would you, going forward?
So we're
since
we're very much guided by statute on how long we can borrow for different types of capital
I see,
projects.
I see.
Some there is some flexibility in some of the larger projects that would be 5 years or more, but a lot of these smaller projects, it's by statute how long we can borrow for.
I see, I see. So those statutes are the Massachusetts general law you're talking about?
Yep. Yes.
And if I may, this, again, we're not going to be discussing this, but I'm just going to use this for illustration. In Article 21, we talk about the pay down of balance of maturing bond anticipation. And correct me if I'm, if you can confirm my understanding, Barbara, this is back to this where you were talking about the bond in general.
Yeah.
As part of this is one of the things that I've heard Barbara discuss, is this leads us into 21, is she's looking at the whole bond picture
Yeah. So I guess.
in general, if I may
Yes, so
finish,
in that-
and making
sorry.
to address your observation about watching interests and keeping the bond. Again, I'm explaining in layman's terms, but both of those are working together to keep our bond situation under review and in good shape.
So yes, so we are rated, we have a bond rating, and that bond rating, which is very favorable for the town of Ayer, because we are strong and conservative, does help with our interest rates, no matter what the interest rate climate is at that moment. And when you're referring to Article 21, what this is because we had such small capital last year, we did what was called a bond anticipation note, which is a short-term borrowing. And that way we can combine multiple years and go out to bond, because it's much more expensive to go out to bond. And so this gave us an opportunity, because we'll have it maturing, to pay some of it down with our free cash because we're in such good shape and our free cash was substantial. So it will decrease the amount I go out to bond for in the fall, and it'll save that future interest payments that the town would have to pay.
That's great.
Thank you.
So then you basically can issue, because I know like, I can read the bonds. So there are bonds, say the general purpose bond, then there are bonds for, say that
Yeah.
building a bridge or buying a fire truck. So then a lot of this will be paid by general purpose bonds.
Yep. And I'd be glad to show you our book on how we issue bonds at some time if you do want to stop by, because it's kind of, from this side, I would equate it in layman's terms to borrowing. And then, but how we borrow is by issuing bonds for
Yeah.
debt. And I'd be happy to show you at some point how we
So
structure
the
that.
town never actually go directly to a bank to like a,
We do not.
like
We-
individuals.
we
so
sell-
when you borrow money, it's always by issuing bonds.
We sell bonds, yeah.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Yes.
Any other discussion?
No, that was great.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Quick, am I allowed to move?
Yes,
Make a
You
motion.
can make a motion, then
You can- anybody
someone must move your motion if you
Yeah,
make it.
All
anybody
right,
can.
I make a motion for Article 10 to recommend.
I second the motion.
I so move the motion.
I so move the motion.
I three move it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we've Article 10 recommend. Next article is debt exclusion fire ladder.
I do.
Is and I'll read Article 11, authorization for debt exclusion for the fire department fire ladder truck.
I do realize a fire ladder truck is so expensive.
Oh yeah. Help save lives. Save lives.
Any other just,
Yeah.
They weigh a lot.
Must be very complicated.
I guess the real question is maybe for the chief. Do we really need to order a fire truck this year?
Oh, he had talked about it. The
Awesome.
existing one was like
How are you?
30 years old. So
As we've done, we've been to Capitol, we came back for another time. So if I could frame it like this, in the early 90s, so all of our structural trucks that were replacing recently, we all did in the 1990s. One in 93, one in 96, one in 2000. The 2001 is already gone. We kind of beat that up and got 20 years out of it. So what happens is these come in cycle. As if you know, recently with supply issues, things are a lot harder to get. I spoke to the vendors on state contract, which we would use, and they're leaning more towards 2.5 years before we get the fire truck. So similar to the fire engine we have that's gone, we went out to bid and it had a contract with. We don't expect it for a year from this March, so in March of '24. So we come a little early, but by the time we get the truck, it'll have maxed out its lifespan. We're putting some money into it to keep certified now. And by the time we would get that would be 30 years old, something you would definitely see at the end of your life, and it wouldn't be recommended that you keep something like that in service. Like I said, I'd look for your support. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have for a follow-up.
any other questions from the
No.
committee?
That's great.
Public question?
Any public comment?
Mr.
A
Chair,
note
just-
from Robert?
Just want to point out, I meant to earlier, on Article 11, when you get the final warrant on Friday in the packet with the board, in the explanatory note, and this has been requested, and we generally do this, we will have the estimated cost impact on the average tax bill. Now, keep in mind, it's estimated and average in the explanatory note, actually on both Article 11 and 12.
Okay.
And there will be presentations on both of these at town meeting. I mean, the chief on the specifics of the truck, but Barbara will be prepared to speak about the cost impacts.
Okay. Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, we also add that into our presentation as we do every year with some kind of debt exclusion. It'll be, usually the last slide puts that up there so the people at town meeting can see that also.
That's great.
Okay. Any other discussion from the committee?
So now, I just everything all I want to do is to understand. So now, the Article 10 is a simple borrowing. So that's and then Barbara just explained that that's by the town issuing bonds. I thought that this would definitely be issuing bonds, but this is called debt exclusion articles. So how is this different? So this 11 and 12, the same thing. They are debt exclusion articles. So that
No, thank you, Chief. I think.
we need so much education.
Okay. So I
So,
think, just to frame your question, Jen, for Article 11 and 12, how does debt exclusion work?
Okay, through you. So unlike the other borrowing, this exclusion is above our levy limit. So the amount and the impact it will additionally impact the tax bill of the taxpayer for the duration of the length
So
of borrowing.
it's not just issuing bond cannot cover all of the costs. So you actually had to raise the tax a little bit to do that. as well.
So issuing the bond is kind of it's separated from this. This is more like we can only have a certain amount of tax levy every year per statute.
Yeah, because 2%.
So by
no,
doing a
2%.
debt exclusion, it allows us to additionally, in addition to that tax levy, to impact the taxpayer. So I wouldn't think of it as the borrowing side because it's still issuing as a bond.
So this is almost like isn't this what's called like a 2% override that thing, right? Like a proposition.
Yeah. But it's for a very specific purchase. It's not just, the town's out of money, and that's not the case. But it is per our financial policies that anything over a certain dollar amount, which I believe is 500,000, we automatically go to a debt exclusion for.
I see.
So that includes the ladder truck and the West Main Street Bridge.
I see. So then, I know that you will add the figures next week, but would you be able to give us a preview of what the impact to individual taxpayer would be?
So I did do a projection through you, Chair,
Yes.
for the fire truck. I based it on a 15-year borrow or bond, and I'm estimating it'll be about a $40.50 impact over 15 years. Now we can go to bond up to 20 years. I was doing this as a conservative estimate at this time because I hadn't gotten a chance to talk to you about the length of time on the borrow
Can you say that one more time? Sorry.
So I did a projection of a 15-year bond length
yeah,
for
yeah.
this debt exclusion, and it is estimating $40.50 per year on the median household tax bill.
Okay, so it's a medium household, yeah.
So I take the median household, which is right now about $450,000 in the town of Ayer, and that would be the impact on that. So of course, a lower valued or higher valued, it would vary a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So then,
So that's what makes this as a debt exclusion, is because it separately impacts the tax rate, and it's per our financial policies that we have to have a separate vote approving this.
And Mr. Chairman, I think it's also important to note that's a 2/3 vote, and so that's step one, and then we have to go off to the town ballot
you.
in the beginning of May, and it has to pass there by a simple majority.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is just step one, and then it doesn't mean we have that truck yet. It has to go off and it has to pass also at the ballot.
That's right. It will be at the ballot. I
You know,
thank you
along,
for that
along
part.
with the other
Yeah.
debt.
okay.
Barbara, may I ask if again, we will look at Article 11 and 12 separately, but you mentioned an estimate on Article 11. Do you have an estimate for Article 12?
So the bridge.
So I do. So with the bridge,
Well, we can probably do proportionally. If 1.6 million is going to impact
Well,
40
she's got
some
the. Just
dollars.
let her give you the number.
Sorry.
Jen.
I'm so glad I cut people off all the time.
So at this point, we're anticipating a $500,000 bridge grant that our DPW director was able to obtain. So I did a projection on $3 million, and this type of project would be a 20-year bond. And I have an estimate of $63 on a median household for that 20 years, assuming it stays at $3 million.
Okay.
And then if
I was going to estimate, give the number from based on this. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
We have a question from,
Not a question, Mr. Chair, just a comment.
yes,
Could I just share with you all, this is not an override. That's an entirely different funding mechanism. Perhaps Robert could explain it. An override is a permanent increase.
Override is very difficult, right? Yeah, and
This is just a temporary
I see, I see.
It's
Oh,
simply-
so but wait, you said temporary increase. How many years would it last?
15, according to what the proposed borrow.
Ah,
So, Mr. Chair, Ms. Conley's point is exact, an override,
yeah.
as mentioned, is a permanent.
Yeah, override is the tax rate, right? So like if this year the tax rate is say $10 per $1,000 property, that if you increase that to $11 per $1,000 value, then it will be that number forever.
Right,
And but
exactly.
if you said that this is one time after 15 years, you go back to.
Correct.
Right, it's as Barbara mentioned, so on the fire ladder truck, it's specific for that project in a specific time, and then it sunsets.
But the thing is, if it's 15, 20 years, it's pretty long time. So by the end of 15, 20 years, you probably need another truck pretty soon. So we probably will be.
Right,
But I do think that it's
Yeah.
probably a number that people can accept,
But
which is
the key point that Pauline said to keep in mind, because override gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
Well, the override is permanent.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So
I
it's not an override.
I understand. Thank you very much. Yeah, I was using that as a sort of like analogy, and I know the override gets very political.
That's what the majority of residents think of
Yes.
a debt exclusion as.
I see.
And oftentimes if that happens, it will go down to defeat.
I see.
So using the word override.
Yeah, it's very bad. Yeah. I understand. Yeah.
Dangerous.
People hate that word. Yeah.
And Mr. Chair, that does bring up a good point though. So this is the last of the larger fire trucks that we have to replace. We did one 2.5 years ago, the pump, the second pumpers. So this is the last of our 3 larger.
I see.
So 20 years plus, you know what I mean, down the road. We'll have ambulances and stuff, but the enterprise fund pays for the bulk of that stuff. So the larger, the biggest ones at the fire department anyways.
I
It's
see.
good to
Great.
know.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, Chief. And thank you, Pauline, for your input.
Yes, thank you.
So,
So let's
Any other further
move
discussion?
to. I think we should move to recommend Article 11 and 12 because.
Just do one real quick.
let's.
Hammer them out from now on.
Up to 30?
Yeah.
We have already spent an hour. We haven't even
Yeah, I
gone
know,
through
it's-
half the time.
Yeah, so, okay, so then, a motion then for,
It-
if someone could,
I motion to recommend Articles 11 and 12.
I will second that.
okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so for Articles
I will
11.
abstain. I will abstain.
Okay.
I'm the probably troublemaker. I spend too much time asking
No.
questions.
Yeah, so we have then 3 votes for recommend on Article 11 and 12 and 1 abstain.
Yep.
It's in the minutes.
Okay. Moving on to Article 13, which is the capital budget request. And again, this is at the, on the warrant, continues, is on the bottom of
So
page.
these are smaller
Correct.
items
Requests,
that the
so-
town will pay out of its
I had no problems with it.
cash reserve or whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
I sometimes get a little, I mean, I'm not born in this country. I sometimes find that like, you do like a study of whether you're going to do
I know,
something.
I know.
And that study is going to cost you 20,
Can we just pay
30,000.
30 grand to rehab the beach?
Exactly. I feel like, why do you need a study? Just do it.
It's a big concrete building. How much could it possibly be?
Yeah. Why waste time, waste money studying it? Just decide to do it. Like,
Is there a good answer for that, Robert? Like, can we just give them 30 grand to fix it?
Many of the projects, and I understand the point through the chair, many municipal public projects, it's sort of a 2-part process. In other words, this funding for this is to do all of the preliminary study and so forth to come up with the exact project and the recommendation and so forth. And then they will be back for the actual funding for the project. So in municipal public projects, it's often this 2-part step, but I understand both of your points sort of from the private sector. Yeah.
Red tape is what I heard.
Yeah. So these are the ones that keep the consultants,
I know. I'm in the wrong line of work.
you should go to be a consultant.
30 grand?
Yeah.
I'll do it for 20.
Wait till you find out how much paper you had to
I know.
waste.
So do we, are we recommending, are we moving forward on this?
I'm going to, I make a motion that we recommend Article 13.
Great.
Yeah.
I
So
second
moved.
that. Yep.
Seconded.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So Article 13, recommend. Okay. Moving on to Article 14, which is GASB.
That's kind of pretty much it. We have the obligation. We can't. Really.
Yeah, that's contractual.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's not much.
I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 14.
Okay, I second that motion.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Article 14, recommend. Moving on to Article 15, replenishment of Ayer Library Trust Funds. Any discussion?
That's okay. I move to recommend Article 15.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Article 15, recommend. Article 16, first year's interest general fund borrowing.
I feel like that's another no-brainer for I pay my bills, so I think the town should pay theirs, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I make a motion to recommend Article 16.
I second.
I will move your motion. We did it out of order, but it's fine.
Oh, okay. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Article 17, funding for aquatic weed control for town ponds.
I'm a big fan of this. Have you ever been to Sandy Pond in the summer,
Yeah.
like when they don't treat it?
A lot of, yeah.
Things grab you. It's not great.
So are we,
Yes, I live on Flanagan Pond, so
Okay.
I
You have it
can
even worse.
I can speak to this, yes.
I would like to make a motion to recommend Article 17.
I will second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Article 17, recommend. Article 18, funding for reserve fund for compensated absences.
Wait, we're in 18.
Oh,
It's 18, yeah.
I will,
Future payments of accrued liabilities for compensated absences.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I think.
I apologize. I'm reading from our short list. I will read from the actual article. Article 18, funding of the reserve fund for future payments of accrued liabilities for compensated absences.
I think this is also contractual.
That's for future payments, right? So it's more of a safety net.
Yes, actually, there was a very good discussion of this last night, or no, 2 nights ago. I look at,
Monday night, but who's counting?
okay. No, this was in Monday night, it was discussed and explained very well that the town does its best to budget for salaries, including absences and what have you, but when people in the future retire or move on, and we have to pay for, I'm going to use private sector PTO for vacation days and what have you, occasionally because of the limitations of budgeting per year, there can be a need to make sure we have funds set aside for that.
I see. I see.
I thought this was
This was
actually
like
good
the
planning.
firefighter thing that we do, right? So
Yeah. And Mr. Chair, just for the fund was created by town meeting in 2020. The target balance that we would like is about 75,000, and we're almost there. So it's asking to put 10,000. You can see the balance is about 63,837.
So once you reach that, you won't need this anymore. You won't need
The previous finance manager, we calculated that, and it's been recommended that ideally you'd have about a balance of 75,000 in that fund.
So I'm saying that next year you probably won't have this article.
We might, right, not, it depends on on retirements or separations.
I'm happy to recommend this.
Okay.
Very
So
good.
I
Do we have-
second,
Recommend, yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend Article 18.
second your motion.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Article 18, recommend. Moving on to Article 19,
That's also similar nature.
forward funding of the town's pension assessment.
Yeah, we covered that in one of our previous meetings, and it saves us boatloads of money.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And being in the pension profession, this is I can't speak highly enough of seeing this kind of thing.
Good, good, good.
So
I'd like to make a
I will
motion-
make a motion for to recommend Article 19.
I second the motion.
Move the motion.
I move the motion.
Chair can't make a motion. You move the motion.
Okay.
I will second the motion.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Recommend. Okay. Article 20, UDAG fund replenishments.
I have no comment.
Some free cash for the purposes of replenishment.
Any discussion, notes on this?
Do you know anything about the Urban Development Action Grant?
It's for a senior center feasibility study, a Park Street infrastructure design study.
It's all about study.
Yeah. And fire phone.
That must not be a lot. PFAS removal is the small.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah. A comment, a note from Robert, please.
So through you, Mr. Chair, just very briefly, the Urban Development Action Grant is a grant that the town originally received quite some time ago that was specifically for economic development or infrastructure purposes. And over time, the fund has become, the grant fund has become unrestricted and is under the select board. So to access it, it takes a vote of the select board. And there's about a balance of about 2.7 million in the UDAG grant. And what the town has done historically is when certain projects have been approved from there, the part of the motion per the policy is that we replenish it from free cash when we can to keep it whole. So what the article would do would take 60,185 from free cash to replenish these three projects that are listed were items that were previously authorized by the select board to be funded with this that didn't have a replenishment mechanism.
Got it. Okay. So I mean,
Wait, that sounds like a select board slush fund to me.
no.
Yeah, I was wondering why couldn't you pay this out of free cash? Why do you need to put in? I guess Robert's point is that this type of work usually is funded through this bucket, right?
Yeah, he said it
I'm
right
trying
here.
to learn that the
We're
municipal government.
We're replenishing the funds, 60,000 from free cash to replenish the money they spent from the fund.
They have already spent it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
So
used,
they're replenishing.
yeah, and through the chair, it's usually been used what I'll call mid-year or mid-year budget. In other words, so these items were not necessarily in the budget per se, but they use the UDAG funds. Like, for example, the fire foam PFAS removal. The fire chief had advised that one of the apparatuses still had the fire foam that had PFAS in it, and we wanted to get that remediated as quickly as possible. It was authorized to use 15,000 from the UDAG for that. The Park Street infrastructure design study was to look at putting the utilities underground on Park Street. That came from the economic development, and that was approved. And then funding for a site feasibility on the senior center.
So I was just curious. So this type of cost typically is taken from the UDAG fund. Is just direct from free cash? So I was just thinking that if I were managing a household, instead of taking from this bucket, that seemed to be a little circuitous rule. If I just take from the free cash, which is like a,
You don't have free cash during the year, right? You have to do something. There's no like bucket of free cash sitting around. Everything's on a line item on a budget, which is what we're approving. There's no bucket of free cash in the end. Correct. This is why they need
It's the budget.
what I'm now going to call the select board slush fund. is
I-
can cover that sort of thing, right?
I
Because it's
see.
now
So
unrestricted
the town does not have free, well, the town does have free cash, but
at the end of the year.
Oh, I see,
Yeah.
I see.
That was what
So-
they didn't spend, which is
Okay.
now free cash.
I see,
Then
I
they got to
see.
figure out what to do with it.
Because that number also has to be certified by the state before they, like, someone has to basically kind of
Yeah.
audit to approve you. Okay, got you.
And
So,
just-
so there is no free cash account. Okay,
No.
thank you.
And two last points. This
please.
will replenish the last of the UDAG, these, the 60,185. We reviewed, there's nothing else outstanding at this time. And number two, the select board is looking to really tighten and really focus moving forward on infrastructure, economic development specifically, and not as often, but it is the purview of the select board. Okay.
So you think the UDAC is a select board slush fund? Okay.
It's unrestricted.
I see.
I mean, it's do you trust your elected officials is really the answer, right?
Okay, I
You
see.
you elect those people. So.
But the thing is that this grant originally came from, if it's a grant that come from state government from somewhere, right?
yeah.
And then it's a one-time thing, right?
Yeah, but we just voted to we're gonna vote to replenish the money.
Well,
So-
did we do this like a previous years too? So there's always that.
I assume it is replenished consistently.
I see. Okay.
We can, I mean, it's public information too. You can always look it up online to see what they put in the budget.
So let's vote on
You
it.
mentioned it, just,
Yeah,
Sebastian, if you could-
online you can always look at the previous budgets, what they were, it's public record, right? So you can always
Yeah,
just
yeah,
compare
yeah,
it to what
yeah,
it was
yeah.
last year.
That, I understand that. You're right. Yeah.
Okay. This is, I'm going to take a quick moment and comment as chair is, I believe the discussion we are having this evening is very good, and I am, and I will mention that sometimes we're a little bit lighthearted, and with the terminology as such as slush fund.
Okay.
And,
Want that back.
but I think it's good that we've got the details on, and again, I think the questions we are asking are very good to have, and we're doing and this is our purpose. So, having said that, for Article 20,
I recommend.
So you motion to recommend,
I'll motion to recommend, yes.
and you didn't want me to say second. I'm so.
No, it's second. If,
Oh, I
if he
second the
says it,
motion.
you move it. You're
I
good.
see.
so have a second, and then all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So Article 20, we recommend.
I will abstain again.
Okay, we have, for Article 20, we have 3 to recommend and 1 abstain. And we move to Article 21, pay down a balance of maturing bond, anticipation note, B, parentheses, BAN. Discussions, comments?
None from me.
No, it's well
Do
explained.
you know what bond anticipation note is?
So from free
I'm
cash to pay
sorry.
down the balance.
Jen-
Do you know what bond anticipation note is? My guess, by just superficially from the word, is that the town had issued bonds in the past, and then once you issue bond, then every year you, I think, need to pay the interest.
Barbara had covered this, but it was instead of issuing a full bond, there's a bond anticipation note, which is for a smaller amount over a shorter period of time.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
Utter clarification can always be
Sorry.
accessed.
See, I need to be taught several times in order to actually.
So because going out to bond is very expensive, if we have knowledge of upcoming debt and we have a year where we don't have a lot to borrow for, which was the case this last year, we will do what's called a bond anticipation note. It is a 1-year short-term borrowing that then will mature, and then we will go out to bond after that.
I see.
So I have a bond anticipation note that's going to mature in the fall, at which time we will go out to bond. It will include a lot of the same items. However, by paying down some of the smaller items from free cash, because we did have a strong free cash year, it is an opportunity to have some future savings.
would you be able to give an example of the interest rate you will pay for the bond anticipation note versus your regular bond?
So I did do a projection. I took 3 of the smaller projects, took the normal lengths that they would be borrowed for per statute, and the current projections are at a 5% coupon rate.
For the
For
longer.
any estimation right now, the financial advisor community is recommending you estimate at 5% interest rate. And using that, I'm estimating about $89,000 in future interest savings by paying these down.
Yeah. Because we're, like I said, we're in a rising interest rate environment. I think going forward, anytime we borrow, we need to be quiet. So
Sure.
what I was wondering is that if the say bond anticipation note is basically a short-term bond that you pay back in 1 year, so that what's the interest you pay on that versus a 20-year bond?
So the interest rate, I believe, on this particular band that's going to expire, I'm going strictly off memory, is
just
lower
take
is
it
lower
down.
than the 5%. I'm going to say it's around 3%.
Uh-huh.
However, the cost of issuing a bond anticipation note, the administrative cost, is substantially lower.
Oh.
So when you have a light capital year, by doing a bond anticipation note and then combining multiple years to go to bond, it can save a substantial
I
amount of
see. On the
administration
administrative
costs
okay.
and work.
Okay, got you.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, overhead costs can be very substantial.
For Article 21 then,
I'd like to make a motion to recommend Article 21.
Great. I will second that.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes, Article 21, recommend. Okay, we move on to Article 22, Stabilization Fund.
To transfer from free cash or such sums of money.
Discussion, comments?
Under the provisions of chapter 4. Be credit to the capital.
No, I think this is perfectly sensible because that's what free cash is for, right? You put it into the stabilization fund. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
uh,
This one did not jump out at me when I was rereading these last night.
Okay.
so I move to recommend on
Second.
Articles 22.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So for Article 22, Stabilization Fund, we recommend.
Yes.
Article 23, Transfer of Unexpended Bond Proceeds from DPW Gate Replacement Project.
Transfer funding is the previously appropriated.
Chairman.
Comment, discussion, and a note from Robert?
Through you, so Articles 23, 24, and 25 all use the same mechanism, and from time to time, these come before town meeting. So what they look to do is transfer an unexpended bond from a previous project. So we borrowed from a previous town meeting for a previous project. That project is completed, but there is still some proceeds remaining, which we're asking town meeting to now transfer to a current project. So Article 23, that would take $10,348.72 that was unexpended for the DPW Operations Center, which you can see was approved back on May 9th of 2016, and apply that to the DPW gate replacement project, which is in the capital. That's to put automatic gate to the DPW. Then Article 24, same mechanism, but it's going to transfer $85,943.41 from the Groton Shirley Road Low Pressure Sewer Project, which has been completed, and apply this to the Main and Central Avenue Pumping Station Valve Project. And then 25, $61,201.15 from the Groton Shirley Road Water Main Loop to the new well source project, which is looking to develop another well source. So that's basically the mechanism for those three.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Makes good financial sense to me.
Yeah. So if you have money that you left over, put it to where else you're gonna spend, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now, 26 is slightly different, that it's going to the stabilization.
So, Mr. Chair, through you, 26 is a little
thank you.
different. It's an unexpended appropriation that was for the stormwater asset management plan. We had to put forth a grant match. So the town meeting of April 26th of 2021 approved $1,250 of that from capital stabilization. We didn't need that, so this article would actually put the $1,250 back into capital stabilization.
Yeah. I would say that I move, we recommend all this is three together.
I second that.
Article 23, 24, 25,
Okay.
up to 26.
Is that a motion or? Was that a motion?
Yeah, that's a motion.
All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Wait, so
So-
for the minutes, the 23, 24, and 25 is what you're motioning for.
I actually want to
26.
include 26 as well.
Okay.
26 is peanuts. Sorry.
Okay?
So I have a motion and a second for Articles 23, 24, 25, and 26.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So for Article 23, 24, 25, and 26, we recommend.
Recommend.
Okay, moving on to Article 27, rescind of prior borrow authorizations.
I would recommend that.
That seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
were we going to comment? I didn't mean to steal your.
Oh, comment, discussion?
I meant from us. I didn't mean to steal your chair thunder.
I'm glad someone's paying
In
attention.
the spirit of being expeditious. I love it.
Very good. So I motion that we recommend Article 27.
I second. Oh,
I beat you. You're good.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Article 27, we recommend. And moving on, as I turn the page. Article 28, Community Preservation Act.
I gotta reread this. Sorry.
yeah, no, I read it too and totally forgot.
We take a moment to.
Okay.
This is disbursement required by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I mean, it's
Yeah, Sebastian, you noted explanatory note on Article 28, disbursement required by Commonwealth of Massachusetts under MGL Chapter 44B for the estimated fiscal year 2024 Community Preservation Fund revenues. Thank you. Robert, do you have some notes?
We're just going to give you a quick crash course in the interest of expediting
Yeah.
Article 28 and 29. So the town of Ayer is a community preservation act community. So what that means is, you're probably aware, if you look at your tax bill, 3% of the taxes, there's a 3% that goes towards CPC.
Yeah.
And there's a state match at the 3%. We have a committee, the Community Preservation Committee, that's responsible for overseeing these funds. And at town meeting, they'll make a very brief presentation through the moderator. They usually do on Article 28 and on Article 29. Article 28 shows up every year. What this does is, it basically, town meeting authorizes the funds they have for the upcoming year, and you'll see the three bulleted areas for each of the categories for the acquisition, creation, preservation of open space, historic resources, and community housing. So those are the three areas there. And then the remaining sum, the $716,950, they have an undesignated fund where the committee can approve funds from for other projects. So this is sort of, I look at this as sort of the annual sort of standard business article. It requires town meeting to authorize it. And then Article 29, they only have one project for this town meeting, the Peroni Park Playground Project. Article 29 would authorize $750,000 from the open space category of CPC funds to complete the playground project. And the chair, Ms. Provodakis, and the committee generally do a very brief presentation on both through the moderator.
So do you know how much this community preservation fund has right now?
It's considerable. You don't.
So,
It was huge last night.
Yeah, it's.
for fiscal year '23, for example,
Yeah.
the CPA tax was 682,000 and the state match was about 421. So they gave us an additional 421.
Yeah, because that's a
421.
3%.
So that's what those first parts are doing, is allocating those funds into different categories. I do not have the exact balances, total balance. of
So
the
they
CPA.
basically every year has almost $1 million they can use to
It
to
did this
acquire-
year. I did this year, and I
So they need to spend that money, right? To either acquire preserve open space or use it to fund the preservation. Because I know that I pay a lot of attention to Sandy Pond Schoolhouse,
That's
and
one
they
of-
got a lot of money
Yeah.
from this. Yeah.
Yes. So those are the three categories. They can use it for open space, recreation, historic, or housing.
Yeah.
And you'll see that there's been a lot of housing been done through the Affordable Housing Committee and so forth.
Yeah, yeah.
Public comment?
Yes, if I may, Mr. Chair, Jeff Tillotson, Affordable Housing Trust. We make a request every year for funds to help local families who might be in a pinch and need some money. So we actually allocate, we're just in the meeting for doing that, where families get rental support. It's the Ayer Affordable, it's the Ayer Rental Assistance Program, and the CPC funds that for housing right now. So that would be one of the uses, so families who need rental assistance to keep in their place.
How much do they give?
It's currently budgeted about $60,000 a year. 10 families get $6,000 each of rental assistance, and we found that the landlords in town are very happy to have it.
Right. Are there any talks about down payment assistance for home buyers or no? Any
No,
talks about?
that's a different topic
Yeah,
altogether.
that's
This is-
probably much bigger.
This is for, I can't speak because I don't know who the recipients are, but typically it's single income families or single income veterans or single income or disabled and elderly people. These are folks who are residents of the town in a pinch.
Nice, that's great.
And it's a program that is designed to last for, I think, up to 3 years. So it's an assistance program for the migration. But that's one of the ways we help the housing. Okay? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tillotson, for your
Like that.
comments.
My neck of the woods. That's great, huh?
So, discussion for, we started with Article 28, Community Preservation Act. We then began to talk about Article 29, Peroni Park Playground Project. I'm going to make a motion that we recommend both Article 28 and 29.
So move the motion?
I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. I will second the motion.
Motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
It's all good.
Okay. That brings us to the,
Last article.
and the last Article 30 is not under the purview of the Finance Committee. Am I correct?
So we don't have to vote on that.
So,
So what does?
opposition?
So we have addressed all 29 articles. So I have just, in summary, we've made a summary of our recommendations on the articles.
It's also
I
in the
will
minutes.
note,
Sorry, good. It's also in the minutes.
and it's in the minutes, yes. And we will be presenting these to the Select Board next April 4th meeting. I would ask that those in the Finance Committee that can make it next Tuesday, April 4th, for that meeting, to please attend.
Yeah. Sure.
I have no other business. Any other business from the committee?
one here.
No,
We have a motion.
I move to adjourn the meeting. I'll give Andrew a chance.
No, go. I'll give it to you, Jen. It's
I
official.
will-
It's in the minutes.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. The meeting is so adjourned. Thank you very much.